Let me see if I can turn the music down a little bit because I got people that were complaining about my music being too loud when I've introduced it. But I don't think this is too loud. But we are live. We are live, and I'm coming at you with 5. Welcome again, everyone, to another edition that's only on channel 2Bluetooth786 on my self-entitled Facebook page, as well as Periscope at GBluetooth786. And we are honored to have on a friend of the show and a friend of mine, the author and writer of The Man Crisis, as well as the John Haynes series. And he's going to talk about his new book, Eternal Night, right on time for Halloween. Please welcome Shawn James to the platform. Shawn, how you doing, my friend?
I'm fine, and I'm glad to be here. How are you?
I am doing great. I'm doing wonderful. If you're breathing, you're achieving, man. Shawn, I do want to talk about, if people may not know this, but we were just speaking about this earlier. There's some type of uprising going on in the Orthodox Jewish community. If you could tell us a little bit about that.
All right. Well, what's going on here is there has been an increase in COVID cases in 9 neighborhoods that are primarily dominated by members of the Orthodox Jewish community. And your Mayor de Blasio has decided to, in an effort to allegedly flatten the curve, he's decided to try to close schools and so-called non-essential businesses. And there's major pushback from members of the Orthodox Jewish community. And we also have your Andrew Cuomo, who has stepped in and decided not to support the closing of those local businesses. So there's a big issue between the Orthodox Jewish community and the mayor's office and the governor's office. And this situation has become really tense because this area is usually known where these Jews are. And they're used to doing things their way because of their religion. And we've had guys like Andrew Cuomo coming out saying that he doesn't really care about their religion. But what's happening here is Bill de Blasio and Andrew Cuomo don't really understand that this is a very powerful voting bloc here in New York City. And this voting bloc is one that can really make or break a candidate. So these guys are skating on thin ice. They want to try to contain COVID allegedly with this Fauci theory and this Fauci approach, but they don't understand that this can cost them in the long run. Now, I made a point about this in a video I called America's Pyrrhic Victory, where I warned about these left-leaning candidates with their COVID policies alienating voting blocs. And we're seeing a part of that Pyrrhic victory happening here, where they're going to try to flatten the curve, but then eventually it may wind up flatlining their whole political aspirations in the future. Now, Bill de Blasio only has 1 more year left as a mayor due to term limits, but this could overall damage the Democratic Party's relationship with the Orthodox Jewish community. And these guys are incredibly powerful here in New York. And again, they can make or break candidates. And this is not a good thing long-term for the Democratic Party overall, because if you alienate this core base, you could winding up turning New York into a red state.
I got kicked out. I don't know what happened. Sorry about that, Shawn.
Oh. Well, I was stating how this whole situation could turn New York into a red state, because this is a very powerful voting bloc, and they can practically make or break a candidate. And if they continue to push too hard on these restrictions with COVID, they could wind up costing these Democratic candidates the next election. Now, this doesn't faze Bill de Blasio because it's his last year, but it could affect Andrew Cuomo. It could affect members of the legislature. It could do serious damage, and these guys don't see where they're going. Like Gretchen Whitmer didn't see where she was going. And I talked about this in a video called America's Pyrrhic Victory, where these leftists continue to push these policies, not understanding they may be pushing themselves right out of office.
Yeah, it just looks like in general, with all the restrictions going on, here in New Orleans, we have our own type of restrictions. We're moving into what's called phase 3.1 under Mayor LaToya Cantrell to bring the COVID numbers down. And, there's no telling exactly how you can bring stuff down like this. Of course, they've tried to get the New Orleans Saints football team back to have, its normal attendance, but down. And so there's no telling how further this thing may end up being, but it's certainly an issue. And I think a lot of people are frustrated, certainly by the restrictions that we have that we're supposed to follow. So,
yeah, a lot of people are angry and a lot of people are frustrated. And a lot of people are not seeing where these restrictions are helping them, because a lot of these politicians, they just keep escalating things instead of just doing a little and letting a little go a long way. They just keep escalating things, adding to the tension. And the whole thing is people are already extremely frustrated because you have half the country out of work. You have a lot of people who don't know when their rent's going to be paid. We have the Congress frozen on stimulus. So you have a lot of frustration going on. And what these politicians, these local politicians, are doing is making a bad situation worse, because a lot of these people are hopped up on their power. And they don't understand that you keep pushing, and eventually the population is eventually going to push back. And I would hate to see another situation like what happened with Gretchen Whitmer, that the FBI just revealed that these guys were practically planning to kidnap Gretchen Whitmer. And they don't understand how frustrating people are out here, and how these restrictions you have to take a minute to chill out before you push people too far.
Well, and I get, the aspect of safety comes first. Certainly, we're talking about having Mardi Gras, which is big up here in New Orleans, but they've had to cancel some of the parades because, not all of the parades, but some of the one parade I know, they're canceling just because, everybody is on there on a float, and yeah, you could wear a mask, but it's just like sitting in a petri dish.
Yeah.
But I guess. And election is coming up, so that can definitely play a factor into what's going on up there in New York for sure. And the Jewish community, of course, has they're a very powerful lobby. They're a very powerful clique, and they can make or break a candidate for sure. But that's interesting you mentioned that. But I wanted to talk about that, and since we're on elections, I'm going to get right into it. Of course, last night was the vice presidential debate of 2020. Kamala Harris, who's the Democratic vice presidential candidate, and Mike Pence, the incumbent Republican vice president under President Donald Trump. Now, if you guys didn't tune in last night, and I don't think Shawn has seen it, but there were some things that they were sparring over. I thought it was going to be typical of what Mike Pence was going to say, because Pence is actually he's actually a former radio host, and he knows how to do media and he knows how to deal with media, as does Donald Trump, whether you like them or not. And I'm going to actually play a clip of the video if we can find it. I hate these ads that pop up. But why I wanted to mention all of this too is that I got what's called here a soul ballot, Shawn. This is an actual, this was sent to my house, called the official soul ballot by Don Hubbard of the Southern Organization for Unified Leadership. Now, I don't know if you get this up in New York, but here in Louisiana, we get a lot of these, especially when elections come up. And some of the people who I know who are running for judge, I have friends here, but I noticed they call it, it's for the Southern Organization for Unified Leadership. But you have the acronym SOUL, which clearly denotes, put together. So it's marketed towards African Americans, Black people. So on this list, of course, they want you to vote for President Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, on some constitutional amendments, no right to and no funding of abortion in Constitution. They say vote no to that. So it's basically a pro-democratic ballot. And I don't know if you get those types of things or anybody else does. Let me know, and we're just chatting about it. But it's interesting that every year we, of course, get people who want you to recommend voting for a Democratic candidate, but we don't get too much out of that.
No, we don't get those kind of things here in New York. I mean, most of these guys, when they run for office, they're promoting on television. So I've never gotten anything like that in the mail. I guess it's different down south than it is here.
Yes. Well, I've always said black people are always conditioned to vote out of fear and history rather than tangibles. And we see Far Side Fan is here. What's up, Far Side Fan? Yesterday's VP debate was better and more professional than the one with Trump and Biden. Yes, it was. It was typical of what I expected. But I'm going to play this short clip, and we're going to get Shawn's thoughts about this. This is the actual clip from the actual debate.
The President of the United States took a debate stage in front of 70 million Americans and refused to condemn white supremacists. And it wasn't like he didn't have a chance. He didn't do it, and then he doubled down. And then he said, when pressed, stand back, stand by. And this is a part of a pattern.
He condemned the KKK, neo-Nazis, and white supremacists, and has done so repeatedly. You're concerned that he doesn't condemn neo-Nazis. President Trump has Jewish grandchildren. His daughter and son-in-law are Jewish. This is a president who respects and cherishes all of the American people.
Okay, well, that was part of the clip that I wanted to show you all. And of course, that was from the debate last night. There's actually was a part in the debate, Shawn, and you didn't see it, but maybe some of the people here in the chat saw it as well, where Biden is at, where I said Biden, where Pence actually called Kamala Harris out on her record as Attorney General of California, and how she locked up black men for countless misdemeanor charges. And it was interesting because she's talking about the Breonna Taylor situation, which I'm going to get to in a second, you know, talking about how she felt the grand jury did not get justice done for Breonna Taylor. That was the question that was asked. And when she mentioned her record, I knew she was done, and this was going to come up because her record as AG is not the best. So with that said, from what you've heard, just I guess based off that clip, what do you think its remarks?
Well, it's like the pot calling the kettle black. I mean, they wanted Mike Pence to denounce white supremacy and President Trump to denounce white supremacy. But what's really troubling is you have Kamala Harris and Daniel Cameron who support the exact same system. So you're sitting there telling white people to deny white supremacy, but then you have black people who support the exact same system. So it's one of those situations that when you look at it, it's like being in the Twilight Zone. They want to talk about Mike Pence and denouncing white supremacy, but we're not looking at Kamala Harris's track record, which was all about oppressing black men, putting black men in prison for crimes they did not commit. And they talk about Breonna Taylor, but we had Daniel Cameron, a black attorney general, who was out here, and he just practically allowed these officers to walk and didn't even, according to one report, even file charges as related to the murder of Breonna Taylor. So
he didn't.
It's one of those situations when you look at it, you go, how can you say he didn't denounce white supremacy when he talked about Proud Boys, which was actually a overt statement, but covertly, you're more dangerous because you support these policies and you let those policies get a pass. I mean, it's just no different than your Eric Holder, who sat there and didn't do anything about George Zimmerman. So he didn't do anything about George Zimmerman, and that set the legal precedent that Kamala Harris followed. So when we look at the left, it's like, y'all set all these policies in place, set these legal precedents in place, and then you want to talk about the other side as white supremacists, but you're whole record has been white supremacist from day one. I mean, if you look at Eric Holder and I forget her name, Loretta Lynch, they got the ball rolling on this type of stuff. Kamala Harris took it and moved it even further. But then you want to talk about Mike Pence. And again, that's hypocrisy as I see it. And you can't say one white supremacy is worse than the other when they're both the exact type of white supremacy, which is all about keeping black people in a second-class status. And I have to say that the left, what they try to do is try to make it look like they're against it, but they're actually for it. And they create legal policy and legal precedent that keeps black people in the same oppressed place.
Yeah, no doubt. I've certainly, one of the things I noticed is that Pence was basically talking, even when the moderator was telling him, you know, your time is up, Mr. Vice President, your time is up. He would continue going on to speak and so forth to get his point across. You know, he was kind of a bully, and then he was a bully. But then Kamala Harris, you know, of course, one of the things that she demonstrated, and I was seeing this on Facebook, she kind of got into the angry black woman stereotype a little bit, and she had to be careful with that because a lot of people were watching, and she was like, I'm speaking. And she was, you know, what's funny was, I don't know if you saw the memes of her facial expressions.
I saw her on television, and she just came across as really arrogant and really condescending. And that's not what we want in a president. I mean, if Joe Biden is alleged to be in infirmed health and not able to carry out his office, I don't trust this woman in the presidency because she does not have the professional demeanor. She does not have the professional decorum. She comes across as really arrogant and condescending. And a president has to be a diplomat. They have to be able to connect with people. They have to be able to build bridges. And I don't see her as a bridge builder. I see her as somebody who is too caught up in their own ego to see the bigger picture as related to what's best for the country and what's best for the people.
DJ B-Side 1965 says the sister girl in chief.
Yeah, the neck rolling, eye snapping. I mean, just ratchet female. So we don't need that in office.
Well, I mean, and of course, a lot of people, you know, I think the thing with Trump that everybody know, like I expect this from Trump because he comes across as he's an arrogant man. You know, from what we have seen, and in fairness, because I listened to the presidential debate last week, there was a part where Chris Wallace, and I thought he was a horrible moderator, but he did say, "Are you willing to renounce white supremacists?" And Trump did say, and I did hear him say, sure. He did say that. The other part was, well, what about the Proud Boys? And he says, stand back and stand by. That is where a lot of people, where he lost a lot of people. Although, you know, he has done this before, going back to the Charlottesville incident when he said there were very fine people on both sides, you know, and there were people on this side that were bad, and there were people on that side that were bad. I'm willing to look at this, though. Antifa, and I don't compare them with the neo-Nazis in a sense because a Nazi is a Nazi. I do think, and I do believe, though, that there are people on the left, and this is documented, especially with your Black Lives Matter, that there are agent provocateurs in every movement. And there are people that have overtaken the Black civil rights struggle. We could go back even in the 1960s. You know, when other groups, the feminist groups, took a piece of the Civil Rights Act because Title IX was the amendment to the Civil Rights Act of 1964. And, you know, you have now the LGBTQ, the illegal immigrants who are coming over, the AKA Dreamers. They're all getting a piece of the pie, but we're not moving forward. And it's all been on the backs of blacks.
Yeah. And what they do is they use us as a springboard to move forward. And then black people, especially black men, are the ones left in the back. And that's one of the things that people have an issue with as related to groups like these, is that they use us as a springboard to push their agenda. Then once they get their agenda, they move forward. Now, when it comes down to these race groups like Antifa, they are just as bad as these groups like those on the right. So I look at the far right and the far left as the exact same thing. They're actually two sides of the exact same coin. And when you have extremists in any organization as the face of everything, that's a bad thing for the country, because it means the country is practically lost as related to politics, and it is lost as related to direction. Because when you have people on extremes, whether they be the far right or the far left, they're not about the best interests of the people. They're just caught up in their ideals.
Right, most definitely. I'm just saying that I don't consider them the same, only because when I think of Nazis, I think of violence. I think of
they are about violence, and Antifa they are a very violent organization. So, and they're the ones who started a lot of the rioting going on, and they took over. I say hijacked Black Lives Matter, and they have practically made the unrest that's been going on for over 100 days in places like Portland and many of these other cities, but nobody wants to hold them accountable. They'll look at the far right groups, but they won't look at the far left groups. I look at both of them and see them as bad for America, because their violence is not helping this country get better. This is all about them pushing their ideology.
That makes Trump correct then.
Yeah, it actually makes him stronger. It makes his argument stronger. So that's why it's like Biden had a lead for a long time, but then because of the rioting, that was giving him ground, and it was proving his point.
Biden never really had a lead. What they do with these polls are skewed.
Yeah, I know they're skewed, but he was starting to gain favor. But then what happened was these riots just took every ounce of his momentum. It just destroyed his momentum. They thought they were going to ride the riots into the election, but the whole thing is the riots went on way too long, and people started to get tired of it. They was like, okay, we know we're frustrated. You're frustrated about George Floyd. We know you want justice. People were willing to support that, but they weren't willing to support people consistently destroying people's businesses, destroying people's homes, destroying property. And it went from a protest to just wanton violence. And that wanton violence and doing things like the CHOP empowerment zone and practically bringing chaos everywhere was the thing that alienated people from supporting the agenda that they had, and the fact that they didn't even bring any agenda. All these people just said was Black Lives Matter, but they had no agenda to present any sort of platform for tangibles. So there's a lot of stuff that they did that just pushed people away.
Well, they had an agenda, all right, but their agenda was not aligned with the Black community, and certainly they do not respect straight heterosexual African American men.
Yeah, it was a promotion for the welfare state and bringing back the welfare state and single mothers. And we already saw what that did.
Yeah, well, they wanted to, basically what they did with that ad, what they were trying to do was basically, well, not ad, but with that, with their platform, they wanted to create basically this single mother utopia. You know, basically showing they don't need a man. A man is not wanted. They want children actually a part of it. They actually talked about how children in their platform are capable of making their own decisions, which hinted to me that it was hinting at pedophilia. That's the way I interpreted it. Yeah. Now, I could be wrong, but I wasn't alone in that assessment. A lot of other people had even said that. And but, you know, your Black Lives Matter, really, I saw your video earlier about how the NBA is going broke, as well as other groups, because they decided to go woke, as you put it. Go woke, you get broke. You don't think it's in the place, I want to ask you this, though. You don't think that it is the place of athletes, or that they don't have a platform, that they can't speak out on issues, or
they have a right to they have a right to speak out on issues, but the whole thing is you have to practice what you preach. When I look at Muhammad Ali, and what made him an icon and a legend was he practiced what he preached. I mean, when he went out here and stood up against Vietnam, he was willing to sacrifice by giving up the world title. He was willing to go to jail for what he believed in. When I look at these other sports stars today, a lot of them preach one thing, but then they practice a completely different set of rules. So they sit there and they're talking about Black Lives Matter, but when you look at it, they don't really do anything in the Black community. They don't do things to help the Black community, like supporting Black-owned businesses or talking about building a stronger Black family. They don't speak out against Pookie and Ray Ray terrorizing the community, because in the aftermath of this pandemic, we've had crime go through the roof because these politicians have let out all of these criminals, and now they're terrorizing the community. We don't have any of them talking about calling out these forces that are destroying Black communities. We have them just talking about going to join a march or a protest because it's a photo op and it's an opportunity for them to virtue signal, but they're not really doing anything of substance. So they're not really doing anything constructive. Yeah, they'll put on a Black Lives Matter t-shirt, but when we look at their lifestyle, they're not really doing anything for anybody but themselves.
Yeah, well, I think athletes in general nowadays, no, they're not the Jim Browns, Muhammad Ali of yesteryears, but I certainly think that they're capable of speaking for themselves. But I think the problem also is a double-edged sword, because if you put the microphone in front of them, you're going to end up, you may have someone say something positive like a LeBron James from time to time, but the flip side of LeBron James is Charles Barkley. You know, Charles Barkley or Shaquille O'Neal. And, you know, Charles Barkley has always been cooning.
Charles Barkley is the flip side of it. He's a clown in that he tries to.
Personally, I feel like Carlos Boozer, you know, I think he's a knucklehead. I'm big on knucklehead. I'm sorry, Sean, go ahead.
Yeah, but Charles Barkley is the other side in that he supports the system of white supremacy, and he's a big clown. And I also roasted him in another video because what he was saying was absolutely ridiculous as well, because the Breonna Taylor case is actually, again, about, like Bill Cosby's, about legal precedent, and it's about protecting Black people's rights, civil rights. And what that Daniel Cameron did was a violation of Breonna Taylor's civil rights. And that's something we really needed to focus on. Everybody wants to focus on Pookie and Ray Ray and who she's involved with, but that's not the core of the case. The core of the case was about Breonna Taylor's civil rights and the fact that this attorney general put out a warrant that was questionable that led to her death. And this is going to set a legal precedent that shows that they don't value a Black woman's life or a Black man's life. And we've had these raids, again, ever since the 80s, and they're not about stopping so-called drug traffic. They're about terrorizing Black people and making them be afraid so that they won't do or say certain things.
Well, it wasn't let me just correct you. It wasn't the AG who put the warrant out. It was a judge.
I know. It was the judge who put the warrant out, but the whole thing is that the prosecutor put this case out. And they're used to doing this because this is how they railroaded Black people for over 40 years. I mean, war on drugs, this is what they used to do. They used to put out these questionable warrants, and they would use them to terrorize Black people, and they would also use them to clear cases. But this time they've been revealed to be caught up in a web of corruption. And it's something that they're not looking at the big picture. They're just looking at, oh, this is Breonna Taylor, but this is more about legal precedent and establishing a precedent that you can't have law enforcement just steamrolling people and railroading them through the criminal justice system just to meet quotas.
Absolutely. And matter of fact, that judge is Mary Shaw.
Yeah.
She actually was interviewed by the Courier Journal. She said that she will defer anything to the FBI in terms of the validity of the search warrant, but she said she was disturbed, concerned rather, that the detective may have lied in obtaining that warrant. And let me just tell you a general rule: police officers always lie.
I know.
I've seen it even in court where they have a mistake with a warrant, and a judge right there was amending it. I won't name the judge or who it was, but I've seen that happen. Keep in mind the police department and the judicial system basically are, I would say, one and the same.
They are. It's all about clearing the cases.
You know, except they all have different jobs. I'm sorry?
Yeah. I say it's all about clearing the cases for them. They don't really care about justice. It's really just about making the numbers so that they can advance their careers.
Now, correct. Now, this is, I hate using TMZ because TMZ, of course, they have a history of racism, but I wanted to put out and go over this video that I have here. This is obviously footage from after the raid that took place. Now, I might get hit with a copyright complaint, so that's why I'm talking over it. But this is just being used for news purposes only. I don't own this footage. It's been released to the public, so it is what it is. Fair use of Fair Use Act for criticism. Now notice how they're coming in there like it's Call of Duty.
Door open.
Yeah, it's a little much.
Let me put it.
I got it. I'll play it. I'll play it here. I'll play it, Mark. Ricky.
He's out.
She's down at the end of the hall. Correct. She is down at the end of the hall. You want to hold the door in this arm or what? You want to take it? You want to work for Ricky?
That. Sorry about that, guys. We're back.
All right.
I don't know what's going on with the computer. Let me try and put that back where we were. Sorry about that, guys. So, yeah, but you're seeing the footage from Breonna Taylor's home, her apartment complex where the police stormed in, and we're about to go ahead and play that again. That clip from where we left off. That's Lee Merritt. He's actually, I don't know if he's representing Kenneth Walker, who was the boyfriend at the shooting. Now this is actually, let me stop it right here. I think this is the footage. I know we were playing other footage, but this is the footage of actually the arrest or when Kenneth Walker was talking to the police. And you can hear the officer, I think this is, I don't know if this is Mattingly or Hankinson, who's saying we announced ourselves three times. Let's see her.
No, we down 3 times police search warrant. Try that. Who's shooting at us? Who's shooting at us?
Hold your position.
Yes, Joey. For somebody.
What is this about? We don't.
SWAT can come. We're not going in there. What kind of gun is she have? What kind of gun is he shooting? Rifle or pistol?
Okay, now he's in an excited state, what we call an excited utterance. So what they're trying to do is find out what gun she's shooting. They're basically trying to build a case against him and incriminate him. So just as a general rule, whenever you get arrested by the police, you don't have to talk. Now he says she was shooting.
No, we're gonna let SWAT. No, we're gonna let SWAT. We're not rushing. We're not rushing. We gotta get him in the car. We gotta get him in the car. What is it? What is it? I don't think you can get. Yeah, I think that
Now, obviously, Kenneth Walker is in an excited state. He just lost his girlfriend, and this is in the middle of the night too. So it's very disturbing to hear all of that. And this one,
clear.
This is another clip.
Check her. We got to check her. We got to check her.
Now, just a warning. This is graphic. This is that's Brianna on the floor.
You want Tim's in here? Tim's in here?
Yeah. Go ahead and get EMS.
Go ahead and get EMS in here. Come inside. Come inside. Medic inside. Medic inside.
Clear. Clear.
You help roll her over.
Roll her over.
Joe.
There you go, buddy. There you go, buddy.
You see the bullet holes.
Check the pulse.
Damn, can you hear us? Full Metro Police Department. Check that wrist, dude. Check the wrist. Let it go. Let it go.
We can get some lights on, man. Let's see if we can get some lights on, man.
The hallway lights.
Yeah,
I'm not feeling anything.
I'm not feeling anything. He needs to go out. Clear the hell out.
Let's zoom on. Everybody else,
let's zoom on. Everybody else,
listen to the living room.
Listen to the living room.
Let them out.
Let them out. Back.
Joe, will you step back so I can get out?
Drywall.
GSW to the chest.
Watch out, hey guys, just watch out for this. Watch out, hey guys, just watch out for this casing right here.
There's also slugging casings.
There's also slugging casings in here.
Casing there.
Casing there. Slug there. Here. Back to third patient. Suspect at the patient.
What's this?
Hey, don't turn the cameras off.
Now, what's interesting here, later on as the SWAT is entered in, Hankinson, the man who killed Breonna Taylor, of course all the officers did, but he actually came back to the scene even though this was a police shooting. And officers, you know, they are not supposed, who are involved in a police shooting are not supposed to make an appearance or come back to the scene of a shooting. They're supposed to be removed completely away from that incident.
They can corrupt the crime scene.
Correct. They can corrupt the crime scene, and there's issues about, you know, there's a whole ton of issues because if he actually did, which obviously it's true that he did come back, then we got to know whether or not he planted anything on at that crime scene. Did they know about it? You know, remember they keep changing the story over and over again about the firearm and who shot first. There was a ballistics report that couldn't even confirm whether the 9mm was actually fired, that it was a 9mm that actually hit Mattingly in the leg. Now, this is Lee Merritt.
Was interesting to you about this newly released body cam video?
You know, it's the part that pulls at the heartstrings, but it's also very important evidentiary-wise. What we call that under law is excited utterance. Things that you say while you're still under the heat of the situation that just happened. And in the excited utterance, you had Kenneth Walker say,
I didn't know this was
I didn't know this.
You could tell in the video, he still had no idea what was going on. Woke up in the middle of the night.
Woke up in the middle of the night to a barrage of bullets.
Or someone banging on the door.
They were scared. They fired a shot. I say they because now there's some question about who fired the shot.
I know that
Kenneth Walker since walked back to the state, he was under threat. And he was told, I didn't hear it in this clip, but I did hear it before. He was told you can go to jail for the rest of your life. You know, he didn't know if that bullet had struck him to the top or what happened. And so there was a lot of confusion, but the emotional and credibility to everything that he adds credibility to everything. The scary thing, of course, is that then he was taken to jail, but he wasn't back charged with crime. And I believe ultimately the evidence doesn't support.
I heard it as an excited utterance when he said it was her. It was her. I don't know if he meant that she actually fired the gun, because the first time they asked him, he said it was her apartment. We didn't know who was coming in. So in the heat of that moment, it's hard to make out what he really meant.
Yeah, and he explains later. And by the time he gets down to the office, his statements that he's made has proven by all the evidence that's come out to be true. And again, that excited utterance of him confirming that they didn't know who was outside. That's really important, because that's going to be something that's in dispute. If this thing ever gets to a trial, we still have a federal route. It still has a federal route to a criminal. And so now we have one of 9 people who were interviewed that they heard the police announce themselves. Of course, Kenneth Walker has always maintained that he did not hear them announce themselves. And this video seems to be confirming that narrative.
Okay, so yeah, that was Lead Merritt. I know that we were watching the other video. It was actually
this is kind of personal, but I think it's pertinent.
About 10 minutes long, and I'll try and see if we can play that again. But Shawn, just from what you've seen, what are your thoughts on it? I know you've done commentary.
I find it to be quite troubling that you had police officers wearing tactical military gear. That's the first thing that I found to be quite troubling about that whole scenario. I mean, and from the looks of things, I don't think that they announced themselves, because the way this guy was acting was like he was just in complete shock regarding the whole incident. And had they knocked on the door and announced themselves, he would not be in that excited state. Moreover, if they had announced themselves, why would he pick up a firearm in that case? So that's something that I find to be quite questionable. A guy who is that excited and that terrified is not going to be in that type of emotional state as related to police officers who have announced themselves and knocked on the door. So that whole part of their argument falls apart when you look at the way Kenneth Walker was behaving in that video. So it looks like they were doing one of these no-knock raids. And again, this is all about terrifying people and getting them terrified so that they will send a message to everybody in the community not to do this, because we will come after you. Similar to the way the Ku Klux Klan would do this to black people when they would do a cross burning or a lynching. But the way things are, it doesn't look like their story about announcing themselves, identifying themselves. That comes across as a lie based just on the way Kenneth Walker was acting. And if they were announcing themselves, why would somebody pull out a firearm and start shooting back at officers who have announced themselves? Now, there are some people who are saying that the neighbors heard this going on and told these officers to be quiet. And again, who tells law enforcement to be quiet when they're executing a warrant? So that part of there was proven to be not true as well. So when I'm looking at this case, I'm seeing a lot of corruption on the low level and even in the offices of your district attorney and attorney general. And this case could possibly blow open and show us just the complete corruption throughout these offices here in that city of Louisville as related to the police department and the way they prosecute these so-called drug cases. So this is another offshoot of the failed war on drugs as I see it. And we're seeing what the truth is about these raids that have been going on for 30 years, how it's not really about stopping so-called drug traffic, but it's all about terrorizing black people. But in this case, they were just caught and people saw the truth about what happened here, that this was all about terrorizing black people, and it was all, and the Breonna Taylor lost her life unjustly if we look at the evidence, because again, if this was the case and they had announced themselves, he would not have fired back at them.
No, and you know, the main question that I keep having is, well, if the ballistics report can't confirm a 9mm hit Mattingly in the knee, as they said, and I think there's even questions about that, the doctors that they saw, then if the ballistic report is wrong, why did Daniel Cameron get up there and lie?
Well, that shows us how corrupt and how deep
and
the
say that a
corruption
9mm
goes.
gun was fired first at the cop. Right. Well, that's how deep it goes. And this young brother here, his name is Kendrick Taylor. I'm sorry, Kendrick Wilson. Excuse me. I was looking at the title. He basically did an interview with The Final Call, 30 minutes long. I won't play all of it, but I can play some of it. He's claimed that he has had his life threatened. He has alleged in his research into this case that all people, even the attorneys that were involved in this matter, from Sam Aguilar to Ben Crump, as well as Daniel Cameron, and some of Breonna, I think he's accused even Mr. Walker. He kind of walked back. He did walk back on that statement, but he's essentially, he has stated that Breonna Taylor was murdered. And I'll just play a brief little clip of it. I don't own the rights to this, but he was clearly upset.
Are the public here in Louisville about the situation, the fact that Breonna Taylor was actually murdered, and it was a cover-up. And that's what I mean, corruption. I'm not trying to pull down the country and trying to go deep into this country's corruption, because we know it runs deep. I'm just trying to uncover the corruption that took place right here in my city that they allowed me to find out about. I can do my research and I can find out about a lot of things. That's not my interest. I want to be a normal person. I want to go back to having a normal life. But unfortunately, because of the type person I am, in the type position that Sam Aguilar put me in, and he made it to where I can see that evidence, and I got to see Breonna's body, and I realized that she was murdered, and she was shot from up close, not from a distance, my heart would not allow me to cover that up. And when I seen that those cops got a wanton endangerment charge, exact same cops that's ran into my house last October, and they came to kill me because of the evidence that I got on my own. But y'all not even aware about that. I got my own evidence in my own case on those cops. But those cops came to do that to me, and then knowing they did that to that girl, and then they get away with it. Me being a black man, me being any type of man, with a conscience and a heart, I cannot allow for that to happen. I made a decision. I knew my life was on the line. I made a decision to stand up to the government. When I say stand up to the government, people think I'm talking about man and black type stuff. No, when I say I'm standing up to the government, I mean people like Daniel Cameron. Daniel Cameron is a government official, and he's elected to the position, and he works for the government. The police department is a government agency. You know what I mean? I'm going up against him. I'm going against the government. Daniel Cameron knew exactly what happened, but yet he's still elected to cover what happened. Me, Kendrick Wilson, because of my heart, not because I'm trying to expose Americans' corruption, but because I had firsthand evidence with my eyes, with my reports. I'm trying to expose to the city and the world the corruption lies right here in Louisville, and those guys took it out of position of power, because these guys are in a position of power when they're making major decisions for our city, and it's not like they just covered up a murder.
Now, I'm not going to play, I can't really play all of it, but because of time's sake, and as well as me not owning the rights to it, but again, this is under Fair Use Act Doctrine, Section 107. This is being shared for purposes of criticism, news, and reporting. I don't own the rights to this, but this brother, his name is Kendrick Wilson. He is a barber. He has alleged that Brett Hankinson, he has had run-ins with him, and it runs deep because if you read further and check out Street Credit channel here on YouTube, he alleged even that Hankinson, he had slept with Hankinson's girlfriend, and that was the reason why he has been targeted by Brett Hankinson.
It sounds like a lot
as well as his barbershop being raided and destroyed, and his home. Yes, so it's running deep. But you guys watch the whole interview. It's over 38 minutes long, apparently. It's not bad to take a look at, but we got to support and protect this brother if what he's saying is true.
Yeah, but it sounds like it's like a can of worms, and it's like we're just seeing the tip of the iceberg is the corruption with this case. And it's like the more we find out about it, the more we find out about how deeply corrupt this state office truly is. And the sad part is we the people are not really taking this seriously, because we don't understand that Breonna Taylor could be anybody here in this country. And if this guy is allowed to do this, it's quite troubling, because this is a legal precedent being set that people's rights, civil rights, are going to be violated, and this is going to be the standard of law here, not only in that state, but could possibly be passed on to the country. So we definitely need a federal investigation into that prosecutor's office to deal with this corruption.
Yeah, he needs to be removed from office. Has doubled down. A grand juror in the grand jury a few weeks ago that it was conducted filed some papers to have the proceedings of the grand jury in regards to the Breonna Taylor case released to the public. And Daniel Cameron had filed an objection to that most recently. He has doubled down on his decision not to prosecute. And I think everybody needs to be aware about where this runs. This was done for political reasons.
He's got to be investigated, and definitely
he needs to be recalled.
Yeah, because he's shown that he's corrupt.
He needs to be recalled. And you know, he was on, I believe, Fox News with Tucker Carlson or whatever, and of course they put their tokens up there to make sure that they can push their agenda. And he was talking about, you know, about Megan Thee Stallion calling him a sellout Negro.
Yeah, it's a pot calling the kettle black situation.
Yeah. You know, I thought that was interesting. But, you know, he was saying, you know, that's always going to happen because you have a different political ideology than others, and they will say that, and every other black Republican is like me. It has nothing to do with you being a black Republican or conservative. There are some things I'm conservative about. It's the fact that you didn't do your job thoroughly.
Yeah. And the fact that he gave passes to corrupt people and just made a travesty of the justice system.
Yeah. I don't know if anybody just wants to see that video of him, but unless we just move on, because I think we spent a lot on this topic. But you guys can check it out when he was on Fox News and how he reacted. I mean, you can tell just by, let me show you guys this picture. Let me just show you guys this shot of him. You can tell just by this haircut what side he's on.
Yeah.
All right.
He's as bad as a white supremacist in some ways. Yeah.
He goes to Sports Clips.
Yeah.
And that was the Saturday Night Live sketch.
Over the weekend, Megan Thee Stallion
that's from Entertainment Tonight.
Live performance political, highlighting the words "protect Black women" behind her on the set during her song "Savage," and as well including audio of activist Tamika Mallory's scathing takedown of the Breonna Taylor indictment.
We need to protect our Black women and love our Black women, because at the end of the day, we need our Black women.
And Megan Thee Stallion will go run to a thug for love.
And the powerful performance was not taken kindly by Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron.
That's the interesting thing about that.
On Fox News, Fox Friends, Tuesday morning.
Well, let me just say I agree that we need to love and protect our Black women.
But the fact that someone will get on national television and make disparaging comments about me.
You know who he looks like? He looks like Tom from the Boondocks.
Yeah.
Cameron, the first Black Attorney General
Mr. Dubois,
in the state, announced last month that none of the police officers involved.
He's the butler 2.0.
To the fatal shooting of Breonna Taylor.
Celebrity that I've never met before wants to make those sorts of statements. They don't hurt me, but what it does, it exposes the type of intolerance that people and the hypocrisy. Because obviously people preach about being tolerant. You see a lot of that tolerance. You saw there.
It's not about your views, fool.
Inconsistent with tolerance. In fact, it's her espousing intolerance because I've decided to stand up for truth and justice.
It's not about your views.
For more on the story, head over to.
It's not about your views. It's about how you treat you failing to do your job and how you treat black people. Because I know for a fact, you just had a case in Minnesota where that Muslim police officer shot that yoga instructor, and he was sentenced. She shot and killed her. He's doing 15 years in prison.
Yep, showing us the double standard.
Right. You know, and I'm sure he feared for his life. Now, I get, yeah, there's a warrant. And yes, warrants, when they're executed even in bad faith, even in bad faith, you know, the general rule is there are police officers that what's called in good faith. They reasonably relied on it. Even if it's faulty, they have a right to execute it. Now, what we see now and know is that these officers lied in the first place to get that warrant. And that at least brings to my attention, if they lied on an affidavit, which is what a warrant is basically an affidavit of you swearing under oath that you attest the facts matter. This search warrant, the contents that you're searching for, the person you're executing against, the residents, everything is correct and truthful. If you fail to do that, then by definition of the law, you've committed perjury. You have committed perjury. And they could be charged for that. There could be charges for that. But I don't think a Daniel Cameron would do that. I don't think he even considered that, especially since the Inspector General of the Post Office there in Louisville even said, yet they allege that in the warrant. So the issue is not about the no-knock warrant. The issue is about the white supremacist thinking.
Yep.
That is the heart of the issue. And Daniel Cameron is a damn fool. Megan Thee Stallion, I applaud her for calling him out. But, Megan Thee Stallion and Cardi B, of course, they talk about respecting black women and so forth. But I think some, these ladies, it's clear from the way they look, they don't have respect for themselves either.
I just find it interesting. I just find it hypocritical that you have Megan Thee Stallion being the one promoting this message when she's talking about WAP and all this other stuff. So I find that to be kind of hypocritical coming from her. Now, that's where her argument falls apart. You're sitting there talking about protect black women, and you're the one who's out here with a thug, and this thug has shot you in the foot, but you're talking about protect black women. And the big problem with her argument is she doesn't even understand about the whole concept of protection. Now, in a video I made this week, I went in depth on the whole concept of protection. And protection is not something that any man gives a woman for free. Protection is something that is given to women who have earned that privilege, and they earn that privilege by submission. So they submit to the leadership and authority of the men in those communities. But your black woman, she has not learned about submitting to the authority of black men in the community. So she's thinking that protection is something that you get from the state, but the state has no interest in protecting black women. It uses black women as a resource in order to get government grants and in order to get government money. So most of the people that she's complaining about, talking about protection, they don't want to protect you. They've got what they want, which is those resources. And they just see a black woman as a way to get resources for themselves. So they could care less about protecting black women. Only thing they want to do is use black women in order to advance their political agenda and be able to get economic resources through government grants and government programs at their expense. So she's got it all wrong as related to protection. And again, that comes from that perspective of coming from that single mother household and coming from the welfare state. So women who come from that whole system, they don't really understand the subtleties of the politics transpiring around them. All they understand is what they've been told. So they really don't understand anything. And I found it troubling that she played the Malcolm X tape talking about black women and protection. And I sat there and said, you don't really understand that those were black women from another era. That was black women from the era pre-feminist movement, because the women of the feminist movement told us they were strong and independent. They did not need a man, and they did not need a man's protection. They wanted the protection of the state. So how can you talk about protection when you went to the state? And the state, again, is not about protecting black women. The state is about protecting itself. And that's what we see what Daniel Cameron was doing, protecting the state's interests, not the black woman's interests.
Well, he's protecting white mommy and daddy's interests with this case, and it's
Yeah.
You know, again, and I think I've had a lot of I had Brother Bernard Johnson. Shout out to Brother Bernard, who's, I'm sure he's still on the road or probably asleep by now if he made it to his destination. Hopefully he got there safe. But he even said himself he was disgusted with seeing Mex in the middle of Saturday Night Live performance while they're twerking their ass off. And I'm not gonna lie to you, being a man, I like seeing that too. I like seeing fine women. Megan Thee Stallion, you know, she is an attractive woman. I agree, but
yeah, she's kind of average.
Well, she's thick. I like thick women. I mean, I do, but you know, I like looking at you know, women and so forth, like all straight men. But you know, honestly, I don't even pay attention to Saturday Night Live too much because I don't think the show is that funny anymore. I think Eddie Murphy is the main reason why SNL is on today because he saved it from cancellation years ago. You being from New York, I'm sure you're all familiar with that since that's where SNL is shot.
Yeah, I'm familiar with it. I mean, it hasn't been good since the era of Philma Hartman and Chris Rock, but this era has turned into the social justice era. So it's like something I'm not interested in because it's not making humor anymore about current events or making satire of things. It's just become one big social justice narrative. So,
well, and Living Color I thought was much more funny. Living Color had social justice stuff in it, but it was actually funny the way they did things, and they had a predominantly black cast. Even with Mad TV wasn't as didn't have the ratings of Saturday Night Live, but they had the right material. They were funny. They knew how to set up a punchline, and they were a diverse cast.
Yeah,
of characters. Even though they weren't in the whole cast, those cast members were actually shown as much equal time as their white colleagues.
Yeah,
you know, and then the color was, of course, all black. You know, Ivory Wayne's creating that. He brings in Kelly Caulfield and Jim Carrey as the only other white comedian and comedians, respectively, in the original cast, but everyone else was black person. Of course, they changed. So they don't, but they don't make stuff like that anymore.
Yeah,
when Fox Network was the network that was challenging and changing TV, they went with Keenan Ivory Wayans after he did "I'm Gonna Get You, Sucker." So, you know, those things are part of my childhood. But for a while, you know, Chris Rock actually was on in Living Color. He was a featured guest.
Yeah, I remember those days. I watched all those shows when they first came on. I used to watch them. I used to watch them all the time. So, and the whole thing is that the politics there was done very subtle. It was mostly satire. They made fun of the situation. They didn't make fun of the person. And they were not just trying to preach to people. They were just making fun of situations. And that's all comedy was back then. But today's people, they're so
sensitive now.
They're just so heavy-handed that it comes across like propaganda.
Yeah, and I think people are more sensitive now to jokes. But Saturday Night Live for me, I see Farside said Saturday Night Live for me was good from 1987 to 2001. Then when they had Chris Rock in that era, Chris Rock and Phil Hartman, because it was hit or miss mostly.
Yeah.
With their jokes. Now, when Will Ferrell and Daryl Hammond and those guys were there, I can remember a part in the late 90s where it was a little bit better in terms of the writing and the impressions that they did. But Mad TV is what I watched, with Will Sasso doing Steven Seagal.
Yeah, I used to see that myself.
Yeah. You were what?
I used to watch that on Saturday nights myself. I was big time Mad TV. I remember when it first came on, 11 o'clock at night.
Right. It used to come on 10:30 here in New Orleans. And they used to have Quincy Jones actually produced that, but they had Orlando Jones, Phil Lamar, and Deborah Wilson, Nicole Sullivan. All those people. Yeah, Orlando Jones is my dude. Orlando actually was a writer on A Different World. And that's our next topic in a second. But Mad TV, they tried to do a comeback with it, but I think it fell through because it just changed. And it, with the cast that they had, I just don't think it was funny. That's interesting. Do you find it interesting that they're on any other sketch shows except Saturday Night Live?
Nobody's really put them together because it costs a lot of money to make these shows. So nobody really has put them together. And also, you don't have people with that type of vision. I mean, comedy is very hard to do, and it takes a lot of skill to make good satire and make good and poke fun at stuff. So the whole thing is that we don't have that type of guy, people with those type of vision. Today's people are so sensitive these days that they cannot take a joke and they don't know how to handle how to do humor anymore. So there's a big problem. That's why we don't see, shows like Saturday Night Live or Mad TV, because the woke people are so thin-skinned, everything offends them. I mean, these are some of the thinnest skinned people I have ever seen in my life. I mean, the least little thing just sets them up. I mean, I remember I was watching a video by a guy called Thinking Critically. He's talking about the people in the comic book world and how they just get set off by the least little thing, whereas other people in my day, you throw a joke at somebody, you just take it and move on. I mean, I remember I was watching a video by a guy called
Shawn?
Yeah, I'm here.
Yeah, what you were saying, you were watching a video by a guy named what?
Thinking Critical. He's a comic book YouTuber, and he did a video about how thin-skinned people are and how they just can't take a joke these days, and how everything just offends people to the point where they just get outraged over the least little thing. And I remember growing up in the 80s, growing up in the 90s, people would take a joke and be able to just go on. But these people, they turn it into
dozens. Yeah, you would have to rib them back. That's how it was.
They don't know how to handle anything. They just go crazy.
You insulted me. You did this. They got the safe space now.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's definitely changed. I think it could still be done. I know they tried to get Keenan Ivory Wayans actually a few years to bring in Living Color back. And he started to, but he stopped because of what you're saying. He thinks it would hurt the original show.
Yeah.
Quality of the original show.
It would hurt the spirit of the original show, the quality. I mean, that was a product of that era. And if you did it today, today's fragile people would get so upset. I mean, there were sketches on there that they couldn't run. Like they had a Colt 45 sketch that they can't run they could never run. I mean, the Wayans were known for some really edgy comedy, and there are some sketches that they did that they don't even put on. They wouldn't be able to put on TV.
They couldn't put on today. Yeah, well, I mean, when they did the Colt 45 sketch was a date rape joke that they did with Billy D and Kim Coles. Kim Coles actually started out as the sister from Living Single. She was a stand-up comedian, and she was on the original cast. A lot of people didn't know that. And but there was one sketch that they blurred out too, where they had the two gay men, men on films. They were doing Men on Football, where Wayne's character, Blaine Edwards, made a joke about Richard Gere and Carl Lewis. And what was funny was David Alan Grier's character, Antoine Merriweather. Surprising I can remember those characters' names. He's like, he said something about Joe Namath, and he said Damon said, you know, I like the name Joe Namath. I like Joe Namath because he's the Broadway Joe. That's right. This is me. This is who I am. I do it the Broadway. And David's character says, well, hold up. You can't say that about Joe Namath. Joe Namath is married. And then Damon Wayne says, well, so is Richard Gere. And you should have seen that gerbil in a wedding dress.
You can't do those jokes today.
No, he couldn't. And they blurred that out even during replays of that. Just like I don't think Blazing Saddles could be made today. I don't think All in the Family or Sanford and Son could be made. That's why I thought it was a disaster for them to do the live in front of a studio audience that they had done with ABC because it was just bad. Like
they have an episode of Wayans Brothers called Afro Cab, where there's a sequence they talk about the guy. They have a terrorist coming in talking about take him to the World Trade Center. They can't run that sketch anymore. So there's all sorts of sketches they can't run. They would be considered too offensive.
Yeah. Well, I certainly think, I hope, I would, at least if they would do a reunion show. At some time to reflect on it, perhaps. I think kids, especially of our generation, some shows can come back. Like I think Tales from the Crypt could come back because there's a longing for a horror anthology series again. Something that we don't have. I don't really watch American Horror Story. Some people like it, but I don't know. It's too weird for me. At least Tales from the Crypt, what you had with that show, there was a setup of a good guy or gets killed by a bad guy, and the good guy comes back to kill him. There was a moral to the story, or the bad guy who does a lot of things and succumbs to his sin and pays a penalty for it. Same, a woman that kills her husband gets haunted by a killer Santa Claus on Christmas Eve. You know, that was I think that was their first episode that they did, and all through the house. Yeah, so that was interesting. So yeah, we don't see stuff like that anymore. I think I would like to see more of those shows like that.
I would like to see them do a horror anthology series. I mean, I think a black horror anthology series would do quite well. I mean, it just takes the right person with the right vision to execute it. I mean, I had an idea for a concept called The Devil's Workshop with Keith David as the host and talking about idle hands being the devil's workshop. So that was an idea I had for an anthology series. And it can be done. You just need the right producer with the right vision and the right execution.
We got to talk about that.
Yeah.
I think that might be a great idea. Yeah. I know they got Lovecraft Country on HBO. I don't know if you've seen it or heard about it. That's like a sci-fi horror thing, but they put a lot of the agenda, if you get what I mean, in that.
I've heard that, and that's why I can't touch it.
Yeah, just like even in Power Book 2, there's the agenda in that as well. We talked.
Yeah. That's why I don't watch a lot of TV, because they keep pushing the agenda.
Yeah. Well, I did want to talk with you. The last thing we want to talk about, because I mentioned Orlando Jones being a writer on In Living Color. And most people don't know this, but earlier today it was announced that Bill Cosby's appeal, Bill Cosby, of course, being the creator of A Different World, he's sitting in jail right now, unfortunately, on trumped-up charges. But his appeal is not only coming up December 1st for hearing and oral arguments, but it's also going to be live streamed to the public, according to my sources. Shout out to Nicole from Nicole's View. This is from Stacey Brown of the Washington Informer. Pennsylvania's highest court announced it will hear oral arguments in the criminal appeal by Bill Cosby on Tuesday, December 1st. The 9:30 a.m. Eastern hearing will occur through virtual video conferencing, and the public can view the proceedings live on YouTube, court officials said. Cosby at age 82, has spent the past 2 years in prison outside of Philadelphia after a jury convicted him in 2018 of 3 aggravated indecent assault charges. Once revered as America's dad, Cosby was accused of plying his love interest, Andrea Constant, with 1.5 Benadryl tablets and then digitally penetrating her at his home in Elkins Park, Pennsylvania. testimony in controversial civil deposition. Any controversial civil deposition, a document that the High Court cited in granting the appeal, pointed to a months-long love affair between Cosby and Constand. The two regularly traded gifts and often participated in petting and touching and shared intimate conversation, including Constand seeking Cosby's opinion on her physical appearance. Despite kissing and other sexual or suggestive play, both Cosby and Constand denied they ever had intercourse. I was okay with that, Cosby has stated, noting that he never sought intercourse with Constand. He has maintained his innocence. And in his only jailhouse interview, Cosby told the Black press that he would never plead guilty to false charges. I was there, Cosby said in the November 2019 interview. I don't care what group of people come along and talk about this when they weren't there. They don't know. Of course, the article goes on describing his relationship with Constand and what he says. And you guys can take a look at it. We'll share it. And of course, the two issues they're going to hear are the prior bad act witnesses. And the main thing here, most important, however, is whether prosecutors legally used a 2006 deposition during the trial. Former District Attorney Bruce Castor testified in a preliminary hearing that he had reached an agreement with Cosby to waive his Fifth Amendment right to sit for a civil deposition. So, having said all of that, Shawn James, give me your thoughts on this, my brother.
Well, I'm hoping that this appeal leads to an overturning of this railroaded conviction, because that conviction was a complete violation, as I see it, of constitutional law. I mean, Bill Cosby was railroaded by the court in that case. We had a judge who had clear bias. We had a prosecutor who I believe maliciously prosecuted Bill Cosby, because when you have a prosecutor who is running for office with the whole goal of convicting an individual, that shows malice of forethought. And this was compounded by a judge who clearly had bias against Bill Cosby. And to use that deposition showed, again, more malice of forethought and malicious prosecution. And there were numerous legal and judicial errors inside of this trial. So I'm hoping that the judges of the appellate court in Philadelphia and Pennsylvania do their job and overturn this conviction, because this legal precedent that was set by the Cosby conviction was one that really was one that destroyed men's rights here in the United States, because as long as this legal precedent is the law of the land, a man cannot get his due process under the law. We are under this standard of trust and believe. And that standard of trust and belief is something that just goes completely against what this country was founded on. A man is supposed to be innocent until proven guilty, and we're not supposed to trust and believe the statements of a woman, because we've seen in the past, from things like the destruction of Black Wall Street, the destruction of Rosewood, and the murder of Emmett Till, we cannot go by the standard of trust and believe, because oftentimes you'll have females who will go out here and tell a lie, and then we will destroy the lives of innocent people, all based on that lie. So I want to see the appellate court do what is right and overturn this unjust conviction, because this prosecutor, he's the one who needs to be prosecuted. This judge really needs to be removed from office, and we really need an investigation into the Philadelphia prosecutor's office to deal with this corruption, because that case should have never gone to trial. I mean, clearly, when you have a prosecutor who runs to convict a man, that's malice of forethought, and that's a complete betrayal of what the office is all about. The prosecutor's office is about trying to prove a party guilty, not coming in with your own personal biases and looking to railroad someone. That's something that is what our founding fathers fought against in the Revolution, and this individual was participating in the exact same behavior that the British participated in when they wanted to go after individuals before the revolution of these, it led to the formation of these United States.
Right. Well, without question, this Kate trial was completely biased. It was definitely a railroading of a man who did a lot for the black community that a lot of people keep ignoring. The monies that he gave to HBCUs, the monies that he gave to black charities, using the NAACP to permitting them to use his likeness and image carte blanche without getting paid anything for the cause of civil rights, and countless other events that he's had. He's put a lot of brothers and sisters in college and given them degrees. Now, what he is accused of, while it is horrible, he is entitled to the presumption of innocence, whether he was accused of petty theft or whether he was accused of being a terrorist. You're innocent till proven guilty in this country. And unfortunately, when you have the media and the press right now who are trying to get a come up on black men, when you have the media and press basically trying to sell papers and not be accurate in their reporting, situations like this, because it's shades of past criminal proceedings, which you guys will read about soon, because I'm working on a book on this in the near future. But basically, you know, it reminds me of the Sam Shepard's and the Fatty Arbuckle trials that took place in the respectively in the 60s and 30s. And we're going to keep getting things like this. And you notice too, Shawn, with the Me Too movement, we're not hearing more about it as much as we did back then, because Joe Biden had been accused of sexual misconduct, as has Donald Trump. But remember a few months ago when Kamala Harris, or last year, when she was running against Joe Biden, she said that she believed the women that accused Joe Biden of sexual misconduct. And honestly, I don't believe the women at all. I think it's pretty interesting that they come with that at that particular time during a presidential election. They always gear up the scandals.
Yeah, I find
but nevertheless, I just Me Too is all of a sudden quiet.
Yeah. But they got quiet right after the allegations against Joe Biden, which shows me they know which hands not to bite. Because I noticed with the Me Too movement, they were going out here as a gynocentric Godzilla, stomping all over people until they stomped on the wrong people in powerful positions. I noticed that when they started going after politicians, they started to back up because they know they needed that political support. Because originally they started going after people on the left. They started to go after a couple of black congressmen. But once they went after Al Franken, they realized they had gone too far, because they had these far crazy feminists who were trying to grab political power, and they were trying to control politicians. But then when they made Al Franken resign his office, they realized they went too far. And that's when they started to realize that they needed that support in Washington in order to be able to get government programs and government money. But they had already bitten the wrong hand, and that hand was getting ready to form a fist to punch them in the face. That's why they're not going after Joe Biden, because they know that they need Joe Biden if they want support. So that's why you see them backtracking, and that's why you don't hear from them anymore. So a lot of them, they know who's paying their money and taking care of them, and they know if they alienate the man who pays their bills, they know they're going to be left out in the lurch, like sadly many of these Black American women have been left out in the lurch, and that they have no protection. So that's why we saw Me Too starting to withdraw and starting to fall silent, because they know they need the money from men in order to survive, and they also need the men to provide them with protection and cover. If they push those men away by making allegations, they're going to be out here on their own, just like this American black woman.
Yeah, most definitely. I'm wondering too, maybe you can tell me what's going on with the case with Cuba Gooding Jr. up there in New York, because his case was supposed to be heard, I think, sometime this month, if I'm not mistaken. Has there been any development on that?
I haven't heard anything about Cuba Gooding's case so far. I've heard of more allegations from other women in certain cases, but I haven't heard anything as related to the sexual assault charges against Cuba Gooding Jr. in the case that came up about a year or 2 years ago, because the justice system here is very slow.
Yes, justice is very slow. We got some horror anthology fans. Yeah, I'm an 80s baby myself, so I remember when they had shows like it was called Freddy's Nightmares. That was the actual show with Nightmare on Elm Street.
I watched all those.
Yeah, I watched all of these. The only one I probably didn't watch was Tales from the Dark Side, but I remember because that was a little bit before my time. But I remember Monsters. I can remember that.
I watched Tales from the Dark Side, Freddy's Nightmares. I didn't watch too many Friday the 13th, but I do remember watching all of Tales from the Dark Side on Channel 11 and Freddy's Nightmares, which came on Channel 9 here in New York. So I remember all that old school horror because that was like considered the 80s were a big era for horror. We practically had horror movies every week, and they run them on Tubi for free. You can watch all those movies on Tubi for free right now. So
really,
yeah, they got Reanimator up there. They got Chopping Mall. They got all these old 80s horror movies, and you can watch them all for free on Tubi right now. So that's what I do on Saturday night.
I know they got AMC has a new channel called Shudder that's up there. They got the Creep Show anthology, because Creep Show, which was based off the 80s movie, which was in turn based off the comic books, the EC comic book is actually. They actually have episodes on there. They have some people who have starred in the actual Creep Show, like Adriana Balbo, this girl from Maude, Adrian Barbeau. Adrian Barbeau, excuse me. Adrian Barbeau. That's it. John Carpenter's wife, ex-wife. And Tobin Bell, who was from Shaw, he was in an episode, as was Giancarlo Esposito, who played in Do the Right Thing. And of course, people know him from Breaking Bad. He played one of the villains there. I can't think of his name, but yeah, I didn't watch too much Breaking Bad, even though it was a great series from what I heard. But yeah, man, but this will be interesting, Shawn. I hope you tune in to the Bill Cosby Appeal. Oh, by the way, I did want to just touch briefly on this, but did you know that Netflix was indicted by a grand jury?
Yeah, I heard about that in Texas. They were indicted for child pornography, and that was justified because that Cuties movie was basically child porn. I mean, there's no excusing it. There's no justifying it. I mean, by community standards, that was child pornography, and they need to be held accountable for that.
Yeah. Well, I don't know legally if it will be upheld in court, just based off the fact that it was a film that they can make their arguments for it. But
well, their argument would be, intent to distribute.
Right. And I don't think legally it may not go anywhere. But
yeah.
But then again, just having it on there with children and everybody, the negative reviews it got, this was something that was going to happen. And Texas wasn't, they say don't mess with Texas.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Shawn, it's been a pleasure, my friend. I do want to talk briefly, though, about Eternal Night. Why don't we talk about that? Because we didn't speak about that much. Now, this is just in time for Halloween.
Yeah.
And Shawn has launched Eternal Night, which is a book about vampires. This is not Vampire in Brooklyn, I take it, Shawn.
No, this is actually set in Harlem. It is the story of Lilith Graves, a pastor's daughter who has fallen in with these vampires and is trying to learn about how to survive as a vampire. It's the early days of her starting out in this vampire scene and learning about this vampire culture. And it's a story set in the SJS Direct universe. It's supposed to be Lilith Graves' origin story, and it's supposed to take you further into the world of vampires that I established in the ISIS series book, ISIS, Night of the Vampires, and ISIS, Bride of Dracula, and ISIS, Escape from Transylvania. So in those stories, I showed how ISIS came to when she had a first encounter with Lilith Graves and how it led to her having these encounters with vampires and then later on Dracula. And now we're going into Lilith Graves' story and how she became a vampire. And this story is set in 1994. And it takes place during the height of the goth subculture and the time of movies like Bram Stoker's Dracula. And I mean, it's been a couple of years before that was Interview with the Vampire. So this one is taking us into the vampire culture in New York, in the SJS Direct universe. The foundations of it shows us that culture, shows us that history, and also shows you some components that we don't see in other vampire stories, like an exploration of how it relates to the Bible and how it relates to spirituality and how it relates to the satanic foundations of the whole culture of vampires. That's something that really isn't explored in other books. You don't really see people talking about how vampires have an association with demons, how they have a covenant with Satan. They don't talk about these aspects because they want to romanticize the idea of a vampire for women. Women like the idea of the vampire as sort of like the bad boy. But I wanted to show how this really has roots with Satan and how it has roots with the devil, so that people can understand, you know, why this vampire is in the place called Eternal Night, because they have forsaken any sort of relationship with God. They have decided to walk away from God, and it's all part. I also explore that in the whole religion of the vampire, because there's a whole religion related to it, and I go in depth in all of those aspects of the story as Lilith takes her journey into the world of the vampire.
All right, that's pretty interesting. Can you show us a picture of the cover again?
Here is a picture of the test book, Eternal Night. This is the paperback. I'm like 95% finished with the editing on the paperback. The Kindle is available for pre-order right now. The paperback, I think, is in the middle of publishing right now. I'm still trying to finish up the next 50 pages as related to editing. So I'm hoping to have it ready by either the week of the 20th on the paperback, so that people can order it and buy it. But I'm going to try to get it done by the end of this week if I can. So paperback will be coming soon, and the ebook will be available officially on Halloween.
Right. Shawn, give me 1 second. Excuse me. Somebody's calling me. Excuse me, guys. I'll be right back. All right, excuse me. So, all right, so we got a lot of people in the chat. Shawn, I think you got some sales here. I like how Shawn's stories mostly take place in Harlem. I like Harlem, but I can't afford to rent an apartment there.
Yeah, it's fairly expensive, but I know that neighborhood because I had family who lived there. And I also wrote a book in Brooklyn. I wrote a book called Recipe for Success, which takes place in Brooklyn Heights. So I go to different neighborhoods and I look them over, and I try to capture the essence of those neighborhoods. So Eternal Night, like Spellbound, takes place in Harlem, and it also takes place in Long Island. Part of it takes place in Long Island. But I have had characters like the Simon character from A Recipe for Success. He lived in the Bronx. The Quiet Man lived in the Bronx. So I try to give people a picture of New York City whenever I do certain books. So I haven't really traveled too much, but I know the city and I know certain neighborhoods, and I want to bring that to life whenever I do a story in those neighborhoods.
Right. I'm still like nonfiction takes up a lot of my time, so that's primarily my thing as an author, the things that I've done. But my book, I've said I was trying to push it for the fall. I've had a lot come up, but I'm shooting for the fall still, that I will be finished with this draft of it and it will be complete and ready for this year. And you guys will be able to check it out. I won't say too much, but you will enjoy it. Shawn knows what it's about. So
yeah, it's going to be a very good nonfiction book. I think you guys will definitely enjoy it.
Yeah.
And you'll learn a lot from it.
You will learn a lot from it. I think a lot of people, and it covers something very relevant in our times, as we were talking about with Bill Cosby. So I think people will enjoy it and get some knowledge. And that's the main reason why you read. You know, reading is fundamental, you know, as the old saying goes. And, you know, it allows you to think too. Do it before it's illegal.
Yeah.
Because they're working on it.
Yeah. They try to censor anybody who puts out dissenting ideas.
Right. And they censor us here on YouTube.
Yeah.
We lose subscribers. And also, I don't know if we have anybody new to the channel, but I don't know if DJ B-Side 1965.
He's one of my regular subscribers. And he watches my
I don't know if he subscribed to my channel, but please subscribe. Ajiki, I know you're subscribed, and because she's always on here.
Yeah.
And you know, it's a matter of I've been trying for months and years on end to build up my platform, and it's a process.
Yeah. That's what I found. It's a very long process. It's a very hard process, and it takes a lot of work. So you have to put those hours in, and it can be a major challenge. I mean, when I first started out doing books, I had to give books away for free on platforms like Smashwords, Barnes & Noble, and Amazon in order to build an audience. And then when I came to YouTube, I had to build my audience, and it took a long time. I wasn't as articulate a speaker as I am right now. I didn't have the presence I have right now. These are all things that take time to develop. These are all things that you have to keep working on. I mean, if you look at my early videos, I'm not as well spoken as I am right now. But it's things you can learn, and as you grow, you're going to become better at it. And that's how you're going to build your audience. And the people who hang with you from day one and are here right now, they're going to see that growth process and be like, wow, I remember this guy when he was doing the videos like this, and now I'm here 4 or 5 years later, and he's on a whole nother level.
Right. Yeah, I mean, well, I've actually I've been doing this for about 10 years at best when I've had videos dropping. Most of the time I did the videos to promote my book, Katrina, Eyes Have Not Seen, Ears Have Not Heard. And I actually I need to upload some of the interviews I've done with Dick Gregory. I think everybody would like that. You know, and because I knew Dick Gregory personally, and he's well missed. I wonder what he would say about these times. But yeah, but you know, YouTube, they make it difficult, and from time to time to get new subscribers, especially when you are a straight man talking facts. They don't like that. But,
yeah, I was there for the gender wars and all that other stuff, and I saw guys lose their channels. I saw people walk away from their channels. I mean, the false flagging made it where people just quit and gave up. I mean, there were some really good voices. I remember back in the day, Dan Freeman, Rick Scorpio. Sadly, we don't have those guys here anymore. And they presented some really strong topics, and we don't have them here anymore because YouTube is so a hostile environment to content creators that they don't like. And I also saw it happen to people on the goth sector of YouTube. That whole section has practically been decimated. I mean, many good friends of mine are no longer making videos anymore, all because YouTube is just so hostile to content creators whose content they just don't like. Either they flag your channel, they shadow ban your channel, and they just do so many things that are passive aggressive to keep you from making certain content. Meanwhile, you can have guys like Logan Paul putting on a clown show, and they have no problem with that. And these guys violate community guidelines all the time, and they get a pass. But if you're a straight black man and you're talking truth, they don't want you on the platform because they want to push an agenda as related to black men.
Right, most definitely. The agenda is real, and you guys beware. And speaking of which, Shawn, we thank you for coming on the platform, brother. I appreciate it. And you guys, if you are new, those of you who are not regulars to my channel, please subscribe and subscribe to Shawn's channel, Shawn James on YouTube. I'm sure he's going to do a live stream tomorrow since it's Friday.
Yeah, there will be a live stream tomorrow, and the topic is going to be refuting this black supremacy concept. So that's what I'm going to be talking about tomorrow night, is refuting this black supremacy narrative.
Right. You know, who was it that said that term, black supremacy? That came from the Terry Crews.
Yeah. I've heard it before when I was doing the passport videos, and it's been around for a while, and it's a major lie that just needs to be shattered.
It is. There's no such thing. Black people don't have the power to control other groups. We don't have that ability to determine their legacy and whether they're going to leave monies to their grandchildren, whether they're going to have businesses. We don't put those barriers up in place, and it's certainly a complete falsehood.
Yeah.
When you say something like that, and you're saying again why people go to and they appoint the Charles Barkleys and the Terry Crews and why they have a job, and that's because their job is to put down black men.
Yeah.
Their job is to put down black women. And Shaq, I was really disappointed in Shaq.
I was disappointed myself. I mean, it was sad to see him do that.
Well, yeah, it doesn't surprise me though, because Shaq for years, if you remember, he got in trouble a couple of years ago when he made fun of the little retarded. I shouldn't say retarded anymore. They'll hit me with that. But he made fun of a mentally handicapped black man.
Yeah.
A while ago. I let him go, but then sometime after that, he got into Shaq and a Fool, which is on TNT, where he attacked JaVale McGee, and Javon McGee, who played for the Golden State Warriors, called him a coon, straight up. So back then, I was like, nah, I don't see that. But now, especially combining what he said about Breonna Taylor, and what he was saying, it sounded foolish. And, to top it off too, Shaq, they always put him, when he's been in movies, with the exception of Blue Chips, he's always been playing a fool, an idiot. He plays an idiot sometimes. And even how he talks in 3-second intervals. Like he's always taking a breath. Personally, I just feel like Kobe and we all got to do what we got to do. Make a move right. But do it all. Like a turkey.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's better than Barkley. Well, Barkley. Personally, that was just terrible.
Mm.
You remember when he actually said on live television, he said, "That's some nappy hair. Let's put some grease in it." He actually said that. He said that on live television.
It's embarrassing to watch.
Yeah. And a lot of people, he called San Antonio, said something ugly about San Antonio women. If you remember that, but you never forget what his wife looks like.
Yeah, he has a white wife.
He's married to Nick Nolte.
Mm.
He went bowling, met her at a bowling alley in the smoking section. And that's terrible. Personally. Yeah. So Yeah, they were. If you listen to Corey Holcomb's 5150, I mean, they always clown Barkley, all the time. Corey Holcomb don't care. Yeah, I see some people they laughing at my impressions there. Ajike, yeah. You know, Shawn doesn't laugh. I'm trying to get Shawn to laugh, but he doesn't laugh.
I don't laugh unless I just didn't feel like laughing. I mean, just trying to keep it professional. I don't want somebody else's channel, so.
Well, I mean, I've seen you laugh when you do your impressions.
Yeah.
Like your British accent you did when you were making fun of Meghan Markle. I just started laughing, and then you did the laugh at the end like Baron Samedi from Living Like That. Yeah, you know, that was cool.
Yeah, but I figured this was a serious show, so I didn't want to get too silly.
Yeah. It's a serious show, but I mean, sometimes I gotta laugh at stuff too, because you know, I'm a comedian as well, so I like to crack jokes about stuff, and you know, because sometimes you gotta laugh to keep from crying. That's the whole thing. Because 2020 has not been the best year. No. And, DJ B-side says, "Come on, Shawn, let's hear that mad scientist laugh."
Well, that may be coming in another video soon. Just let Meghan Markle or Jesse Williams pop up with something, and maybe he'll come back, or maybe I'll bring it back for another high value man video. I had a whole bit planned for a high value man. So
Jesse Williams, who's that?
He's an actor who was on Grey's Anatomy.
Oh yeah. That guy. What did he do?
Yeah, he was the guy who got the BET award. Thought he had arrived, divorced his black wife, abandoned his children, decided to get with a white woman. And I did several videos on him. I did Messy Jesse's Hot Mess.
I remember that.
Those were quite funny. So I found him to be quite funny, to think that he could abandon the black community and make fun of the black, and then want to abandon the black community. And then when things turned bad, he wound up the hard way. You just can't use the black community as a springboard.
Yeah, well, that's just terrible. Well, I remember that, but yeah, he did that shit. But Musty, I call Jesse Smollett Musty Jesse.
Yeah, I call him Musty Dusty Jesse.
Musty Jesse. Yeah, because he got caught with that crap. But Shawn, I appreciate it, man. Everybody get the book Eternal Night. Check out Shawn's channel, Shawn James, as well as buying his books like the John Haynes series. The Man Crisis is a book that I have that I've been deep reading into. And, you know, and also support me as well. You see the donate ticker at the bottom where it says Cash App Gavin Richard Esquire, Google Pay Gavin.grich1@gmail.com. You guys can contribute to the channel there if you wish. And we're going to have Shawn come back on again. Of course, he's always welcome. And my brother, you have a blessed and safe night. Be safe up there in New York. And let other people know what else you're going to be doing soon.
All right. Well, I have Eastern Blast from the Past getting ready to come out in November. And my friend Lawrence Cherry has a book you can get right now for free on Smashwords. That book is called A Father's Love. I'm going to leave a link to that in the chat. You can also, it's coming to Barnes & Noble's, Nook too, but you can get A Father's Love for free. Lawrence Cherry, who is one of the writers who works with me, this is a Christian fiction book Larry has written, and you can get that book on Smashwords right now for free. And this is a full novel you can get for free. And he wanted to publish it on my imprint. I let him publish it because he wants to get the word of God out to other viewers. So you can get that book for free right now.
All right, and you guys check that out. My friend Shawn James, it has been a pleasure. Shawn, stay on because I just want to ask you something quick after the end of the broadcast.
All right.
In the meantime, you guys, Be safe, be blessed. I will be back tomorrow for another live stream. I've been doing a bunch of them. And Shawn, I also want you to check out the interview I did with Reverend Clenard Childress. We talked about abortion in America and how the numbers of African Americans have actually decreased. And he says it's a direct result of that. So that was pretty interesting. And you guys check that out. But tomorrow I will have on Bishop Gerald Scott, and Bishop Gerald Scott will be doing will be talking about some topics tomorrow afternoon. That'll be about 3 o'clock this time. So with that, guys, this has been another edition of Gavin Richard Presents here on my channel, GBoot2786. Thank you, Shawn James, and thank you all for tuning in. Please subscribe to the channel if you are new, and also donate if you can to the Cash App at Gavin Richard Esquire or Google Pay Gavin.grich1@gmail.com. Good night, everybody. Peace and blessings. I'll holla.